Hello, how you guys doing? James here. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're having a good day or wherever you're at out there in video land world. I always say. Um, I have, you know, before I start the video, uh, I want to say is America. Even though there's a segment of people that want us to move forward in this country, but just but there's a segment of people that don't. And there are places in the United States that don't want to move forward, even though they try to hide it and resemblance. Because right now, due to the economy, it changes some people, but that people don't understand that people from all walks of life make the world go round. Ideas, inventions bring people together, all walks of life. But there's a separation with people in America. And these videos about to show you, going to prove my point. There's some people that still live in segregated areas, but it's not directly, but it's indirectly. Remember, there's two types of racism. There's one that's in your face racism, and there's one that's just hidden behind the agenda. In this video, shout out to the content creators for their video. One is Virtual with Brian. I'm going to play his video. And I'm going to show you, as a black American, as blacks in America, old things never died away. Despite the Jim Crow laws and things like that, housing segregation, there are still people that don't like this particular group of people, and some of the other people. So, people say the past is the past, but this video is going to show that the past is still in the present. And the people say don't bring it up, but you got to bring it up, because how you going to bring something up if you don't solve the problem? But here's the video.
No black people allowed. That's not a quote from 1952. It's the unspoken rule still alive in parts of America today. In this video, 10 U.S. towns reserved for white folks only were pulling back the curtain on places that didn't just stay white by chance. They were built that way, and some still operate on the same blueprint. These aren't small hiccups in history. They're towns that whisper whites only without saying a word. Whether through housing covenants, policing patterns, or community hostility, these no-go towns for black people reveal how segregation never truly ended. It evolved. Hit the like button, subscribe to Virtual Travel by Brian, and ring the notification bell for more eye-opening content. Let's jump right in. Number 10, Fallbrook, California. Sunshine, avocado farms, and segregation in a floral dress. Welcome to Fallbrook, California, the town where diversity apparently got lost on the way to the farmer's market. Nestled in San Diego County, this charming slice of Southern California has all the visual appeal of a postcard. Rolling hills, quaint cafes, and a whole lot of whiteness. You'd think in one of the most diverse states in America, Fallbrook would reflect that vibrant mix. But nope. The most recent U.S. Census puts the town at roughly 74% white, with the black population not even cracking 1%. That's not a small oversight. That's a system doing exactly what it was designed to do. Ask longtime residents, and they'll talk about preserving neighborhood character. But what exactly does that character look like? Because if you're black or brown, you might find that character suspiciously resembles exclusion wrapped in HOA rules and zoning regulations. Real estate agents here are polite. Too polite. That kind of polite where they smile while nudging you away from the quieter neighborhoods. That's racial steering, folks. Not illegal in theory, but very much alive in practice. Subtle enough to be deniable, blatant enough to be felt. And don't even get started on the unspoken vibes. You won't see burning crosses, but you might feel the burn when you walk into a boutique and suddenly every cashier finds something urgent to do in the back. Microaggressions are practically on the tourist brochure. Oh, and gentrification? It's alive and kale-fed here. They'll open a gluten-free bakery on the same street where a working-class family just got priced out, then call it progress. Cute shops pop up, but somehow black and Latino families vanish. Weird coincidence, right? Fallbrook doesn't just resist diversity, it politely sips wine while pretending it never heard the word. It's the kind of town where saying Black Lives Matter gets you side eyes at the coffee shop and whispered conversations about how divisive you are. So ask yourself, would you want to live in a place where your presence is seen as a disruption rather than a contribution? Where your kids might be the only black faces in the school yearbook again? Fallbrook isn't waving any flags, but the message is still loud and clear. This town didn't forget the past. It just learned how to keep it polite. But the message is still loud and clear. This town didn't forget the past. It just learned how to keep it polite. Number 9, Boole, Idaho. Boole, Idaho. Population around 4,700. Diversity? Well, let's just say it's still working on the definition. This is the kind of town where someone will tell you, we're not racist, right before saying something that makes you flinch so hard your soul shifts. With a demographic makeup that's over 92% white, and a black population so small it doesn't even make the census pie chart, Boole isn't just lacking diversity, it's avoiding it like it's contagious. And no, that's not just an accident of geography. This town has a long, uncomfortable history of subtle, and not so subtle, exclusion. Boole was never officially labeled a sundown town, but dig through local lore and you'll find more than enough folklore to raise eyebrows. Stories passed down through generations about what happens to strangers after dark, and tales that somehow always end with, so we just stay to ourselves. It's not racism, they'll say, it's tradition. Black travelers who've passed through often report that sixth sense we all know too well. That weird silence when you walk into a diner, the heads turning, the awkward pauses in conversations. It's like walking into a room where someone was just talking about you, and not in a good way. Even those just trying to visit say they feel like extras in a horror film called Get Out, the Potato Country edition. One wrong turn and suddenly everyone's eyes are glued to you like you dropped out of the sky. You ever been watched while pumping gas like you're about to rob the town blind? Welcome to Boole. Economically, this town thrives off agriculture, especially potatoes and trout farming. But socially, it's stuck somewhere around 1958, and if you're wondering why more people of color don't move there, maybe it's because they know exactly what the town is trying not to say out loud. Even schools in the area reflect the imbalance. While the Hispanic population has increased slightly due to migrant labor, the black student count often stays at 0. That's not a coincidence. That's a system doing a very specific job, keeping things comfortable for the majority. So here's the real question. Can a place claim to be welcoming when its culture, economy, and even its sidewalks seem built to keep others out? Boole doesn't have a sign on the city limits, but the message is still written all over the faces staring back at you. And trust me, they're staring. Number 8, Pullman, Washington. Pullman, Washington, home of wheat fields, Washington State University, and just enough racial tension to make you clutch your student ID a little tighter. On paper, it's a college town, progressive, educated, woke, and all the usual buzzwords. But dig a little deeper and you'll find a whole different syllabus, Subtle Exclusion 101. The town is about 78% white, with black folks making up a microscopic 1.3% of the population. And before you think that number's just because of geography, let me remind you, this is a university town with international students flying in from across the globe. So, when the only color in your community comes from the football team's away jerseys, something's up. Students of color, especially black students, have often reported a familiar kind of isolation. Not the loud, in-your-face racism of the Deep South, but the kind that hides behind strained smiles and overly polite small talk. You know the type. Where are you from? Is less about geography and more about deciding how uncomfortable they should be around you. Off campus, things get even more awkward. You walk into a coffee shop and suddenly you're the only black person for miles. The room doesn't go silent, but it might as well. It's the kind of place where diversity is celebrated on posters but side-eyed in person. Black students talk about being tokenized in classrooms, called on for every diversity discussion, treated like unofficial spokespersons for an entire race. You get to be the star of Black History Month, but try getting your hair cut without driving to Spokane. Good luck with that. And let's not forget about policing. Pullman has faced criticism for racial profiling over the years, including complaints of unnecessary stops and searches. In a town where Black people are barely visible, they somehow still manage to get over-policed. Funny how that works. Now, if you ask locals about diversity, they'll point to a few cultural events or international student fairs, like that magically solves everything. Meanwhile, Black students continue to report feeling isolated, hyper-visible, and unwelcome. Pullman is what happens when a town reads How to Be an Ally, but skips the chapter on actually inviting Black folks to the party. So, the question is, can a place really be inclusive when it still clutches its purse in the hallway? Progressive in theory? Sure. But in practice, Pullman is still figuring out how to share space without making Black folks feel like they're trespassing.
There it is.
Wow. So what you think, America? You think is it over completely? Is it really over? The racial stuff, is it really over? Remember when I said there's direct and there's indirect racism. Always remember there's two types of racism. And a lot of people don't want to talk about that type of racism because they want it hidden. They don't want it to be known because it's going to cost money. And we don't want it to cost money, so we have to step out of ourselves to really make it feel comfortable. And people want to feel comfortable and be expressive and be free on the way they feel about different people. And so and for people who are white that feel uncomfortable around other groups of people, this might be your ideal place to live.
America sells the American dream, a land where anyone can make it, no matter their background. But for many Black Americans, that dream is more illusion than reality. The experience of being Black in America isn't the same everywhere. It shifts dramatically from state to state. In much of the country, diversity is barely discussed, and the promise of opportunity is often out of reach. Today, we're exploring the top 10 whitest states in the U.S., places where numbers and lived experiences collide. This isn't just about census data, it's about the daily reality of exclusion and isolation. We'll hear real stories and face a truth that persists in 2025. Buckle up. We're taking a road trip through a side of America many ignore. Let's dive in. Number 10 is Utah, famous for its scenery and Mormon culture. The Black population here is just 1.5%, and that's more than a number. It's a feeling of being an outsider. The dominant culture shaped by the LDS Church is polite, but often exclusive. For Black residents, that politeness can mask a lack of true inclusion. It's not always overt racism. It's the constant sense of being other. Everyday things like finding a barber or familiar foods become reminders that you don't quite belong. Social circles are tight-built on generations-old connections. The political climate is deeply conservative. Conversations about race are rare or dismissed. Black residents are expected to assimilate into a culture that doesn't see them. On paper, Utah offers safety and beauty, but for many, it's a place of profound loneliness. Community is hard to build when the very idea of community feels closed off. A lack of diversity isn't neutral, it's a barrier to belonging. Utah's exclusion is quiet, polite, and persistent. Number 9 is Maine lobster lighthouses and over 94% white. The Black population is just 1.7%. Here, exclusion isn't about a dominant religion, but a deep generational homogeneity. In small towns, being Black means being a novelty constantly on display. Microaggressions are common. Where are you really from? Or you're so articulate. It's not about overt hostility, but 1,000 small reminders you don't belong. The lack of Black professionals, doctors, teachers, business owners creates a cycle of underrepresentation. Discrimination in housing or work is met with few resources or understanding. Maine's quaintness and insularity can be deeply alienating. The reserved nature of Mainers can feel like a social wall. For Black residents, difference isn't celebrated, it's isolating. The state's lack of diversity is structural and historical. Belonging here is a constant challenge. Maine's welcome is as cold as its winters. Number 8 is Montana. Majestic, vast, and less than 1% black. Here, black community is almost non-existent. There are few, if any, black churches, businesses, or social spaces. Black residents are often truly alone, navigating a world that's never considered their presence. Isolation can be dangerous. Stories of open hostility and racial slurs are not uncommon. In rural areas, being a visible minority can feel especially vulnerable. Race issues are dismissed as big city problems, so there's little public discourse. The promise of freedom and open space can feel like a cage of invisibility. The live and let live mentality rarely extends to those who look different. In Montana, the big sky can feel like a vast, empty expanse of loneliness. Here, invisibility is the rule, not the exception. Number 7 is South Dakota, home to Mount Rushmore and a black population of just 2.3%. Racial dynamics focus on white and Native American relations, leaving black experiences overlooked. Black residents exist in an invisible middle ground, facing discrimination without recognition. Hate crimes and overt racism are alarmingly common for such a small population. Conservative politics mean little will to address these issues. Calling out racism can get you labeled as the problem. Everyday life is lived with hypervigilance and anxiety. Simple acts like a walk at night become fraught with risk. The state's beauty masks a harsh social reality. For black residents, the American promise feels especially hollow here. In South Dakota, being seen and heard is a daily struggle. Number 6 is North Dakota. Black population about 3.9% boosted by the oil boom. More people didn't mean more welcome, it often fueled suspicion and tension. The state is deeply conservative with a culture wary of outsiders. Black workers drawn by jobs faced rampant discrimination in housing and employment. Social suspicion was open, being stared at, followed, or scapegoated. Law enforcement's response was problematic with racial profiling and disproportionate arrests. The justice system, almost entirely white, operated on a double standard. Black residents felt unprotected and targeted by institutions meant to ensure safety. Economic opportunity alone didn't create inclusion. Without real effort to build bridges, diversity only fueled prejudice. Many found a paycheck but lost their peace of mind. In North Dakota, a welcome mat is just a word. Number 5 is Iowa, famous for Iowa nice, but not always for black Iowans. The state's 4.4% black population faces deep urban racial inequality. Cities like Des Moines and Waterloo have some of the nation's worst racial disparities and arrests. Law enforcement bias and police misconduct are persistent problems. Trust between black communities and police is broken. Black leadership and representation are lacking in government, business, and education. Policies are made by those with little understanding of black experiences. The result is frustration and disenfranchisement. Iowa's exclusion isn't overt, but systemic and insidious. The state's progressive image hides a harsher reality. For many, the promise of inclusion is just an empty seat at the table. Number 4 is Wyoming, the equality state, but not for racial minorities. With just 1.3% black residents, invisibility is the norm. In many towns, a black person's presence is an event. The state's infrastructure is built for a white population. Diversity isn't even discussed. Racial profiling on highways is a real danger for black travelers. A routine traffic stop can feel perilous with no support system to rely on. Wyoming's politics are silent on race, focused on individualism and minimal government. The prevailing attitude, if everyone's treated the same, there's no problem. This ignores bias and his...
Let me interrupt this, and I want to say this, and this come across my mind. If you're a black woman with a white man, you're a black man with a white woman, you go through these states, you be careful. This is a warning. This is why I'm playing this video. One of the reasons why I'm playing this video, because some people don't all see things the same. Because it may not be pleasant. Think about it.
Historical disadvantage. The welcome here isn't just unwelcoming, it's non-existent. For black residents, the struggle is simply to be seen. Number 3 is New Hampshire state motto, live free or die. For the 1.8% black population, that freedom often means being invisible. The state is over 92% white. Diversity is atmospheric, not acknowledged. Everything assumes a white audience, from products to culture. Black residents face exclusion through invisibility, not hostility. Awkward encounters and ignorant questions are daily realities. the political landscape resists discussions of systemic racism. Advocating for change means fighting a worldview that doesn't see your concerns. Freedom here means being left alone without support or recognition. In New Hampshire, invisibility isn't a privilege, it's a peril. The promise of freedom is a one-way street. Number 2 is Vermont progressive, liberal, and 1.4% black. The problem isn't overt racism, but a well-meaning cluelessness. Microaggressions come from ignorance, not malice. Black children rarely see teachers or professionals who look like them. The message, people like you don't belong in positions of authority. Isolation is intense. Being one of the only black people for miles is a heavy burden. You're always representing, never blending in. The lack of community is emotionally draining. Vermont votes progressive, but fails to create a welcoming space for black residents. Good intentions aren't enough without real diversity. Even the most beautiful scenery can't cure this loneliness. Vermont is a cage of polite, suffocating whiteness. Number 1 is Idaho, less than 1% black, but infamous for its white nationalist history. Northern Idaho was once a haven for the Aryan nations. That legacy lingers. The state's reputation is a flashing keep out sign for many black Americans. The culture is overwhelmingly white, conservative, and sometimes hostile. Anti-government sentiment can overlap with racist ideologies. For black residents, every hostile stare carries ambiguity and risk. Diversity is almost non-existent. Weeks can pass without seeing another black person. The sense of vulnerability is constant. If something happens, support is scarce. Idaho's combination of demographic isolation and a legacy of organized racism is uniquely menacing. The state is trying to change, but the risk remains high. Here, even existing while black can feel like a provocation.
Yep. But that's why I made that statement. Because if you go through there, being a truck driver, riding on a motorcycle with your white spouse, you stop in one of these towns, you have some problems. Trust me.
Ever wonder what the Social Security tax is? In this edition of Tax Tips by TurboTax, we'll explore what it's...
Imagine this. You're planning an epic road trip across America, but there's a catch. Some places might make you feel like you've time traveled back to an era you'd rather forget. What if I told you there are states in the U.S. so whitewashed that diversity feels like a foreign concept? Buckle up, because today we're diving into the top 10 whitest states in the U.S., where black travelers and residents might not exactly get the warmest welcome. This isn't your average travel guide. This is a wake-up call. Curious yet? Let's roll. Before we jump in, here's a question. Have you ever visited a place where you felt like you didn't belong? Stick around, because this list might just save your next vacation, or make you rethink where you plant your roots. Let's start with number 10. Loa, a place where cornfields stretch farther than the eye can see. Butter sculptures are practically a cultural treasure, and the black population clocks in at a mere 4%, leaving the state a whopping 84% white. Think of it as a living, breathing monochrome painting, where diversity feels like a whispered rumor rather than a reality. Why is it so white? History's got a hand in it, with settlement patterns and economic barriers keeping things pretty uniform, while modern-day vibes sometimes hint at an unspoken, we're good as is attitude. For black residents or travelers, Iowa can feel like stepping into a spotlight you didn't ask for, especially in rural towns where you might be the only black face in a sea of Scandinavian complexions, greeted with curious stares or that loaded question, so, what brings you here? It's not always blatant hostility. Sometimes it's subtler, like microaggressions or being treated more like a guest than a neighbor. On paper, Iowa's got perks. Affordable living, low crime, and state fairs with fried goodies on sticks. But dig into the stats, and the cracks show. Black Iowans are 7 times more likely to be incarcerated than their white counterparts, face steeper climbs in employment and home ownership, and often deal with racial profiling that turns a trip to the store into a low-key interrogation. Cities like Des Moines or Cedar Rapids might offer a sliver of diversity, but venture into the countryside, and it's a different story. Think fewer palm trees in Des Moines than diverse faces, and a social scene where Midwestern politeness can mask casual racism, like backhanded compliments or awkward silences. Iowa's job market might sound decent, but opportunities don't always trickle down equally. And in small towns, you might feel like you're auditioning for a role in a real-life Get Out sequel, complete with that eerie, you don't belong undertone. It's a state that loves its quiet agricultural charm. No rush hour, plenty of space. But for black folks, some areas send a vibe that says, visit if you must, but don't unpack your bags. Do you handle being the unicorn in this wheat field? Or would the isolation make you hit the road? Low is a paradox. Picturesque and peaceful, yet potentially alienating if you don't blend into the snow-white backdrop. Number 9, New Hampshire, a state that's got more to it than meets the eye. All wrapped up in one big, revealing paragraph. Known for its fierce live free or die motto, New Hampshire boasts a 90% white population with a black community so small, just 2%, that diversity here feels as rare as a street without a Dunkin' Donuts, painting a picture of a place where autumn leaves dazzle and mountains beckon. But inclusivity might not always follow suit. Why is it so white? Blame history. New England's long been a region light on racial mixing outside a few urban pockets, and New Hampshire doesn't even fake an effort to catch up, staying stubbornly uniform while the rest of the country shifts. For black folks, this can mean walking into a rural town and feeling like you've crash-landed from another planet. Think subtle stares, microaggressions like being trailed in stores, or even outright hostility that turns a peaceful hike into a tense standoff. The stats back it up. Hate crimes jumped 38% in recent years, with racial minorities often in the crosshairs. And black residents and travelers report everything from racial slurs to that quiet, chilling exclusion where no one says much because they don't want you there. Sure, the state's got charm. Scenic peaks, historic vibes, and a quirky obsession with kicking off presidential primaries. But beneath that postcard exterior, there's a rugged libertarian streak that loves freedom for all, until all includes people who don't fit the mold. In cities like Manchester or Nashua, you might find a flicker of community, but step into the smaller towns and it's a different game. Locals with their "don't tread on me" energy might eye you like a UFO sighting, leaving you wondering if "live free" applies to everyone. Black voices here talk of harassment, intimidation, or just being flat out ignored. And while it's not pitchforks and torches hostility, that passive-aggressive New England chill can make you feel frozen out, socially, not just by the weather. Jobs and housing? Tougher sledding for black folks, with bias creeping in like an uninvited guest. New Hampshire's fiercely independent, breathtakingly beautiful, and perfect if you love quiet living with no traffic jams. But for black residents or visitors, it can also feel isolating, unwelcoming, or even unsafe in spots. Raising the question, could you thrive in a place where freedom's loud but acceptance whispers? Or would the cold shoulders send you packing? Number 8. West Virginia. West Virginia's black population barely nudges 4%, leaving it a staggering 92% white. A demographic so lopsided, it feels like diversity took a wrong turn on those winding country roads and never found its way back. Why so monochrome? History's fingerprints are all over this. Old school segregation baked into the hills, paired with modern day resistance that clings to the past like moss on a rock, keeping black numbers low, and the vibe firmly, this is how we've always been. For black folks, stepping into some parts of West Virginia can feel like walking onto a movie set, where you're the lone extra in a scene that doesn't want you. Rural towns might not roll out the red carpet unless it's guiding you straight back to the interstate. And reports of standoffish attitudes, racial bias, or even outright hostility paint a picture of a place where outsiders get the cold shoulder, especially if you don't blend into the 92% majority. It's not just whispers either. Confederate nostalgia still lingers in some corners, and small communities can feel stuck in the 1950s, with black residents noting smiles that don't reach their eyes or questions like, "What are you doing here?" that carry a loaded edge. Economically, it's a rough ride for everyone. High poverty, slim job prospects. But for black folks, it's a steeper climb, with higher unemployment, lower wages, and resources as scarce as a vegan diner in Appalachia.
Let me interrupt right quick. I know about West Virginia because I live in Ohio. I've been to West Virginia many times. What he's saying is definitely true. I remember there's a couple of times I went through there, and I remember one time we going through there with some college friends, and I was the only black person. We walk into this restaurant, and I kid you not, I don't know, it was somewhere down by Charleston, and the whole restaurant turned and looked. They didn't catch this because we was on our way out to the eastern coast. But these people in this restaurant, I kid you not, they all turned. We didn't come in loud or talking in, just walking in, but they see me walk in, and it's like they all look like this, and I'm like, and the people I was with didn't catch it, but I caught it at the time. I'm like, what's wrong with these people? Because you walk in the other city, you see people walk, but yeah, there's some people that still haven't grasped the scene. Multitudes, multicultural. There are places in America, I'm telling you, and you can tell when it's, particularly when it's a group of people. We all have it in every culture, but particularly in majority of the culture is white, and you go into these areas, yes, you will stand out. And they would, and like I said, remember the two type of race I mentioned earlier? Now let me put this in a term. You visible, but they really want you invisible. They treat you like you're invisible, even though you're visible. That's another terminology of racism that they do. But yeah, West Virginia, yeah, he is. I can tell you some story, and I can tell you a story. Another time I was in West Virginia, and I was in the little rural towns like this, right? I went to this town and went up into the mountains, and it was like coming from northeast Ohio going to the town. I didn't know that the temperature divided up like this. So I go up into this town, and I go with this goofy guy because he met some girl. We get down there, and I kid you not, I never seen something like this in my entire life. It was poor. These people were poor. And when I stepped outside, and I saw a young boy wearing winter boots in summertime. I get out the car. I don't know if you ever been in the country, you've been next to a pig pen, but you can only imagine that smell. Those of you that live in the country, you know what a pig pen smell like. And it stinks so bad. Then in them parts of West Virginia, they have like these boards, like a walking board, and then they got a creek that run underneath the board. And you see about 2 or 3 or 4 of these houses down in a valley, and surrounded with woods. We get down there, and the house, they got the door open, and you ain't gonna believe this. You know how some people get livestock like chickens, and usually chickens, they keep them in a certain area. You have chicken feathers all over the place. And I'm like, what kind of place is this? I walked up in this place, man. They must have just got done eating their form of breakfast, because it's like steak and eggs. And then half the house it was being worked on the inside of it. So I was scared. I was ready to get up out of there. But, luckily, he met his friend. We talked. I had to go hide out in another room, because they probably would have said nothing to him, but I was with him, so I had to go in his room. As I'm walking, because I think her father or somebody was walking past. Check this out. I glanced out the window, and I know this wasn't a chef uniform. This was a robe. It looked like a robe. Okay? It was a robe. Now, and in my eyes, oh shit. I'm like, oh man, how did I get myself in this situation? So somehow, I guess, by the grace of God, I didn't meet the man in person. I didn't see, but I saw what he was wearing. He was wearing a long, like a Klan robe. Yeah. And this town, so as we going back, we stop in this town, and it's one of those towns where the white people don't even make eye contact with you. Like I said, you visible to be invisible. And it was called Irma, West Virginia. Now, if you white, you good, because you see some, content creators like Nick Johnson and the other one, yeah, they go on through there. But if you black, no, wait, no. No, the other people that you see, them big content creators, oh yeah, come to West Virginia, I like it down there, yeah, it's good. Depends on what you look like. But if you go to certain parts of West Virginia, oh my goodness, and that was one of the few times. And another time I went down there was with some crazy broad, was a neighbor of mine, and we went to Morgantown, West Virginia. But yeah, I've seen enough of West Virginia, and yeah, I can verify that. And Kentucky, there's some places in Kentucky like that. They like cousin. They're the Hatfields and McCoys. I'm telling you, they're the real. And when I say they're the real Hatfields and McCoy, they are the. If you ever heard a story about one of your white friends from the country can tell you about the Hatfields and McCoy. These people like something like that. They like something you seen off of WW. If you're a wrestling fan, like. Remember the back in like Hack Song Jim Duggan and them folks like that, or the one comedian that was dressed like a hillbilly, Larry the Cable Guy. If you ever heard it, he got his like get her done. Yeah, they look just like that down there. They look just like that. I kid you not. And them parts of the parts down there, and it's kind of, it kind of make you kind of like, but yeah, it's a type of town you get in, you get, keep on going, and I went to some parts, and it's Pennsylvania. There's certain parts of places outside of Pittsburgh's like that. Like for example, there was a place not too far from where the wreckage from a 9/11, and I stopped it. I was doing a courier, coming back from the East Coast, and I happened to stop through there. I don't know what part of Pennsylvania this is. I don't know what they call it over there by that part. They have a memorial. It's not too far from that memorial where they crash landed in that field over there on 9/11. And you go to that town. I stopped there and get some gas. These people, and like he said in the video, they look at you like you just stepped out the spaceship. Yeah, you wouldn't believe that there's some places in America is like that. And I say this earlier. If you're a white person, that kind of white person that don't want to be around other cultures and think that black people complain, they're always doing this, and they always bully your kid. Well, you can look at some of your states and towns. You ain't gonna have a problem in them places, because there's no black people going there. And if you black, you silly, you could take a chance on moving there, trying to get away from your own people. But I wouldn't go too far. I always say stay in the mix. Sometimes I know you gotta leave the hood, but stay in the mix when it comes to these places like this, because you can go from one end. Yeah, you want to get away from the inner city, because I know it's bad. It's no matter if you go in some worst part of a state and it's a hood, but if you go out if you're black, you go out in the rural area, you gotta deal with something like this, and you don't know. And you might be one or two nice people. That's just one or two. That's not including the rest of that population out there. Some will be kind, and it might be one kind. At least if they know that and most people who are really know that the areas like that who are white, they'll let you know if they're hey, you don't want to be out here, and don't take offense to it if they tell you. Because at least that one white person will tell you the truth. Because there's a lot of white people will ignore it. Say, no, well, I never have any problem out here. Well, I never heard any names. No, because the demographic of the people ain't saying racial slurs around, because you're not part of the racial slurs that they're referring to by appearance and everything. And even though that there's some good people in all races, yeah. And some people do look like, some people believe like that, but there's some people among the people in these towns don't see the same thing, and they might hold power and everything. They might be on the police department, they might be the judge, they might be a business owner. You heard stories about this, and you saw a video, and they could be like, I like what this one commentator said. They can form like Phil Voltron out there. It's us against everybody else. It's not us against what is wrong and what is right. And it comes down to my race versus your race, subconsciously, you know, with some people. Some people don't do the right thing, even if they know that if they do what they do is wrong, and they probably say because of fear of their life, because if they say anything, they will get their life, they would catch, you know, heck, they'd probably get worse than some black people would. There are still places like that in America, ladies and gentlemen. There are some places that are still like that. Trust me, believe it or not. But I just wanted to share that story with you. You know, I've been a very open person, and I've seen places, and I don't, you know, put one demographic, put and say all the people in the areas like this. No, it may not be all the people in that town or that state, but they know. And the white people in them state, they know that. They know. Trust me, they know. They know. They heard them racial overtones. They probably ignore it, whatever, and say that guy's just a jerk. And the reason why I say this, what I made a comment earlier about, because if you have a white girlfriend, a white boyfriend, you're a black woman, you're going to encounter some stuff like this. Trust me. They can put on a face, but when that interracial thing, when it comes to the kids, they think it's going to be influenced on their children. So that's why they really kind of don't like that. And they told the kid, you bring somebody home that look like you better hit the door. Family cut out, and you heard and there's stories out there like that in some of these places. So this is the reason why there's some people like that. Again, not everybody could be like that. You might meet a wonderful person that they're not like that. But if you go in their town and you go in that state, you're going to see something. You might see it in the police. That's the worst thing you can do. And I'm warning my people outside the United States. This is how America really is. This is the America they don't tell you about. It all comes down to it. We might be all together, you know, speak the same language, have the same certain ways, but there's a difference between them. And this goes back hundreds of years in America. This thing still exists in America. Still exists in some of these places. And so, but for the people who think like these people, that's why they move out to these places. Because one of the reasons why, and look at it this way, for them, the area is cheaper because there's not that much going on out there. So you could be a digital nomad. You don't have to worry about nobody breaking your car, being robbed, whatever. I mean, and be around people that look like you. I mean, for the people who think like that. This is for people who are like that. You know, and so hey, it's pretty much telling you. So that's what it was, and this is the true part of the United States. And some people don't want to admit this, but now you see Trump is trying to make it the way it was. That's why he brought them people from South Africa over here, so they can see they go any place out there, because they think it's because of this. They don't have to see none people that look like ourselves. They pretty much told you. He pretty much put in getting rid of all the other people. He's trying to bring back throughout, and there's some places like that. So I'm just saying, be careful. And for the people that trying to be gentrified, why don't they go out there? Why don't they go out to them places? It's cheaper. The cost of living, that's one good thing about it. And you can raise your family and get worried about being bullied by no black kid, no brown kid, or nothing. Because that's another thing that they complain about. You know, they complain about somebody constantly being accused about being racist. Now, well, you have to look at it this way. You got to be accused of being racist. You got most of the people that look like you out there. There's some people that that's another complaint that they use. Another thing, like I said, the cost of, you can't beat that. Cost of living is right. Nice stores, nice market. Put a market out there. Hey, you have your own paradise. Now, to my black people, I'm gonna ask you. I would love if I had a chance. I ain't got the comments on, but if I had the question to ask the black people, you get your reparation. If we ever get reparation, you see what I'm saying? You have to leave. Because these same people have that same, some of these people have that same spirit. And they'll micro aggressive. But some that want to stay here and be a part of the American dream, you go right ahead. That don't think too highly of your people, you go right ahead. Your random Tatums and all these other people, Jeffrey Lee Peterson, you go right ahead. But if you go out to any towns, you're going to find different. Long as you can stay, be in a certain type of black person, you can go out there, but it's not going to be a comfortable feeling. But for some of us, if you about your people, love your people, black and black, don't go there. So you ever get your get some kind of love? I think I'd take my chances. If not someplace where the black population is in states, and you're wealthy, I'll go to the Caribbean and Africa. Because look what kind of administration we have, and it's going to get worse because people start blaming other people. Just some food for thought. All right then, ladies and gentlemen, shout out to the content creators, but I just want to give you that story. And for the people who's not like that, God bless you. But the ones that do are like that, because this is what they always complain about when it comes to the blacks. They had a whole party state. There you have it. So your Charlie Kirk, your Nick Fuentes, and there's nothing to complain about. Your white nationalists, you have to worry about. What you worry about? All right, then, ladies and gentlemen, take care. Be blessed. See you on next video.